Good afternoon. Thank you to Chairman Stile for welcoming us today, and thanks for your indulgence as I rushed over from an appropriations markup. I am hopeful that this meeting today will be the committee's final time catering to the demands of election deniers. I'm hopeful that once we are through with this anti-voter exercise, my majority colleagues will feel liberated, finally, to put unfounded bogus claims of voter fraud and the lack of election integrity behind them. This bill, what the majority is calling the American Confidence in Elections Act, is really nothing of the sort. It will do nothing to increase voter access to the ballot, which, in my view, ought to be our primary goal and objective, nor will it make Americans feel any more confident that Congress is addressing the real threat to the health of our republic. Former President Trump and his supporters who have spent years now undermining the strength of our democratic institutions. The bill is unfair, undemocratic, and un-American. As the Washington Post has said, this bill will open up the spigots of dark money nationwide and make voting more difficult. Like many state-based anti-voter bills, which we've seen in recent years, which are nakedly partisan power grabs masquerading as election integrity, to borrow another phrase from the Washington Post, ACE Act provisions appear to have been concocted in a voter suppression laboratory with election deniers like two-time committee witness Hans von Spakovsky and Cleta Mitchell, former President Trump's lawyer, who has been drafting suppressive voting laws around the country, performing the roles of mad scientists determined to unleash this anti-democracy monster on the American public. Today, House Democrats will see what we can do to make this legislation more palatable to our democratic institutions and to the American public. I plan on offering, along with my colleagues, dozens of amendments. I hope each can be meaningfully considered by this committee. But at the end of the day, the anti-voter, pro-dark money ACE Act is fatally flawed. And while Americans can take solace from the fact that this bill will never become law, I again urge my colleagues to work in partnership with our side of the aisle to achieve the dream of full electoral participation for all Americans. I want to note, Mr. Chairman, we've enjoyed working with your terrific staff, and I mean that sincerely. The process for this markup, however, has caused some confusion. The notice provided for electronic pre-filing of amendments and for any amendment filed after the deadline and requirement to deliver 25 copies of the amendment to 1309 Longworth House Office Building. In conflict with the notice, we were advised to deliver 25 copies of pre-filed amendments. And before I yield back, I would just like to raise a parliamentary inquiry. What is the basis in the committee House rules to acquire the hard copy delivery of pre-filed amendments? And with that, I'll yield back and wait for your answer.
Under Rule 20 of the committee's rules, it allows the chairman to set the regulations as needed for the amendments. Any further parliamentary inquiry?
Well, I just want to note that that's contrary to the notice that went out, which indicated that we would not have to have, and frankly, you know, in an environment where we're worried about paper supplies and trying to make sure we're conserving both dollars and trees, seemed to me that was unwarranted.
Your comments are taken into consideration, and apologize for the difficulty it may have posed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You yield back?
I do, sir.
Yep, very good. Without objection, the opening statements of all other members will be included in the record if they're provided to the clerk of the committee by noon tomorrow. The clerk will please report the bill.
H.R. 4563, a bill to promote election integrity, voter confidence, and faith in elections by removing federal impediments.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with. Also without objection, the bill will be considered as read and open to amendment at any point. I have an amendment in the nature of a substitute at the desk. The clerk will please report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 4563, offered by Mr. Stile of Wisconsin. Strike
Without objection, the amendment in the nature of a substitute is considered as read and will be considered as original text for the purpose of further amendment. This amendment makes technical and conforming changes and tweaks. Do any members wish to be recognized?
This is just on the technical amendment. May I just ask for clarification? This is simply on adopting the amendment in the nature of a substitute, we'll be able.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee report H.R. 4563
Wait.
favorably to the House as amended.
No, I'm sorry. I have an amendment at the desk.
All right. Mr. Chairman, I reserve
I
a
thought
point
this
of
was an
order.
amendment in the nature of a substitute. I'm sorry.
We brought it forward, and then it's considered as original text.
That makes for the purpose of amendment.
Yeah.
He offered to recognize your member. He offered to recognize your member didn't speak up, and so members.
No, we'll allow, we're not gonna, we'll start off. I got you.
The amendment was
I
not
thought it was.
adopted.
I got you.
What do you think you were doing? There was no vote, there was no voice vote, there was no recorded vote. You know what you were doing.
We'll allow.
I understand. I'll,
No,
got it.
trying to be functional here.
Yep, gotcha.
You have to adopt the ANS before you report the bill.
You yield back?
Yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do have a,
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will please distribute the amendment. The clerk will please report the amendment.
Got it. Okay, good. Well, you're the one that, yeah, you don't want to.
Good. Don't open it back up.
Let sleepy dogs lie.
The clerk will report the amendment.
An amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 4563 offered by Mr. Morelle
Without
of New York.
objection, further reading of the amendment will be dispensed with.
Mr. Chairman, I reserve a point of order.
The gentlewoman reserves a point of order. Mr. Morelle is recognized for 5 minutes in support of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to advance this amendment. The amendment is the Freedom to Vote Act. We believe, as I indicated in my opening statement, and as I've said through repeated meetings of this committee, that our freedoms are under attack. The freedom to make your own health care decisions, most critically, the freedom to those who choose. Freedom from fear, where our school children have routine active shooter drills and extremists in Congress simply say, oh, well, we'll pass along our prayers and good wishes. Even the freedom to read what you want, with the bans on books increasing at a rapid pace, paralleling the mid-20th century. This amendment is about protecting the most fundamental of those freedoms, the freedom to vote. This year, state legislatures have passed a near-record number of new restrictive voting laws. The Supreme Court found multiple congressional maps racially gerrymandered, and violent threats against election workers and officials remain a constant peril. This amendment will protect the most basic and fundamental freedoms. For example, the amendment will expand automatic voter registration and same-day registration now allowed in 22 states and in Washington, D.C. Set a national standard for no-excuse vote by mail for every eligible voter. Protect the integrity of our voter registration list by prohibiting unlawful and faulty voter purges. Expand early voting by requiring states to offer early voting at least 2 weeks prior to Election Day. Protects access to the ballot for individuals with different physical abilities. Makes Election Day a national holiday. And prevent enemies, foreign and domestic, from subverting the will of voters by restricting the politicized removal of election officials and cracking down on foreign influence in our politics. The freedom to vote is freedom for everyone. As a son of a community that holds as hallowed two famous Rochesterians, two famous Americans, Frederick Douglass and Susan B. Anthony, who dedicated their lives to expanding the franchise, expanding the right for all Americans to vote. I feel incredibly strongly about the freedom to vote and the expansion of voting, which is the most basic freedom that we hold. This amendment guarantees just that, and I urge its adoption. With that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Is there further debate